damn, like the way that I'm doing it isn't working right now. I need to figure out the other way that people do this of like reaching out to brands and talking to them. And there are people that are, don't have to be consistent. And then just every time they release something, it blows up. But the majority of us need to have some level of consistency. We have to bend our will a little bit to algorithmic overlords.
Welcome back to Able Heads, the podcast where we chat creativity, business, and everything about the creator economy. Hi, my name is Anika. I'm your host and also a designer and podcast host, which is weird because I used to be an engineer. And we also have Kirk Wallace on the podcast, as we have for the past few episodes, who's also an engineer turned creative. I'm really excited to chat about pitching today, pitching yourself to clients, which is something that is so talked about and there's so much around it. So let's get into it. Let's get into showing up consistently on social media and how consistency is the pitch. Welcome to the episode, Kirk. I'm excited to talk about pitching. I feel like a lot of people think about it and think about showing up for yourself, but I feel like social media in itself is you pitching to the world. So I know
Mm.
you've mentioned this in the past episodes that you've never had to pitch yourself. What do you think makes your presence on social media a pitch on its own?
Yeah, you answered it in such a good way already of like, I haven't directly pitched to any client specifically for better or worse, but I'm always pitching all of the time online. And that's kind of how I've done it. And I think I've really just done it through, I just try to do what I enjoy seeing online. Like I just like sharing my work and talking about my work and talking about others' work and just like engaging in that way. And admittedly, I don't know how relevant that is today compared to when I was like really doing it that much more. And like, for context, I really started doing this in 2012 probably, and really ramped up to it in 15, 16, 17. And now it's changed so much since. But I think the core of it is the same, which is authenticity and like excitement and stuff like that. Like the coding and the paints and the way it, you're doing it, whether it be through Reels or through something different or Behance or Tumblr, like all of these different mediums change, but I think the core kind of always remains the same. Just sharing my work.
Yeah, Tumblr is such a throwback. I don't think anyone uses Tumblr anymore. I came across this platform called Contra, which is super
Yep.
gaining popularity recently. And I think that's also a very interesting way people pitch themselves because essentially you're sharing your work to the clients and your creatives. So it's not just the clients who can hire you, but also your creative community who can subcontract. So I think that's a very underrated aspect of creativity in itself too, where every conversation feels like a pitch. I don't know if it's my business brain talking, but I feel like every conversation could be a pitch, if not with the transactional intention, but with the idea that everything that you talk about reflects your goals, your outcomes, what are you thinking about, where you come from, and what are your values. And I think social presence kind of plays into that too.
Yeah. My big start was like on Dribble, which I think is sort of a spiritual predecessor to Contra a bit, in that like, yeah, the pitch was like the first work I started getting was not necessarily from like an art director at Nike or whatever. It may have been friends that were working on a project with Nike and they were like, hey, can you help out with this? And then like they're like more small micro ways of growing rather than like I'm going to become a designer at a company. It's more like I'm going to help out with this poster, or I'll do just the lettering for this person's poster, or whatever. So yeah, the pitching I think is also, it's a good question to ask yourself when you start, is like, who am I pitching to? Because I think we all think that like we have to be pitching to a company or the CEO of a company or whatever. But the reality is that there's a pretty wide kind of gradual gradation of different people that we can be pitching to. And I totally take your point that you said too, of like everything is a pitch, but not in the dirty way of like every time you get coffee with someone, you're like trying to angle a way to get hired, but it's through like community building and things like that. And people are pitching to you too. And like I'm hiring people all the time and never hiring a full-time person, but always hiring for little things. So I think it's important just to realize that like there's so many different types of ways that you can engage with work and working and contract work and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think to that point too, it's also important to be open to that idea. And I know this has been mentioned before, and Rapland says this quite often, that yes, you can pitch to clients and yes, they can reach out to you. But when they reach out to you, you have to be ready to work for the pitch that you work for. And I've
Right.
experienced this before where I've pitched something to someone 6 months ago, and I may not even know how to use that tool, but I'm pitching how to showcase that tool. And now 6 months later, I've been asked to do something, and I'm like, okay, well, now I have to teach myself to do this. And it works.
It
But if it works
does.
for, yeah. Yeah, so you have to be ready for the pitch to even work for you. So that's interesting. So when you first started sharing your work, I know you mentioned you shared what you loved and what you saw on the internet and what where you were coming from, but I'm sure there was strategy and curiosity behind that. What was that? Can you talk about it?
Whether or not I knew the strategy was there immediately or not is possibly an evasive qu- question to answer, but I very quickly realized that like the more I could share my process and my thinking, it made me a stronger individual to hire. Because even,
Mm,
despite what people might think, like even in 2009, 10, 11, 12, it was still like really competitive. There still were like it wasn't ChatGPT, but it was things like Fiverr or Upwork and stuff that was also like a thing that could replace you. Um, so I was always trying to aim for work that was sought after from like a strategy perspective and like your brain more than just being somebody that's really technically good. I always wanted to be kind of sought after for my thinking and my vision. So I would share that. I guess my point is like when I was sharing the work, I would share the context in which it's being presented in. I would try to bring some of my own personality into it. And it's a delicate balance, of course, right? But I found that the deeper I shared, the better. I see a lot of people that just share like a picture with no caption, for instance, and it just doesn't give much to grab onto. And that could be a client or it could be a friend, like because you're kind of battling two different things when you're sharing your work. You're both trying to get the right person to see it, but you're also trying to get like a lot of people to see it because the more people that see it, the better chance that the right person sees it, and so you're both like going for juiciness and like lusciousness and richness in the way that you're sharing because you want someone to see it and then send it to a friend, like, yo, look how cool this thing is.
mm,
But you also just, and then when the right person sees it, you want them to grab onto the right part. So like, oh, this person not only has a good final image, but we can also work with them on feedback, and there's all of the thinking that goes into it. And I'll stop in a second, but I have one more like the Nike logo or any logo, right? Like if you just show just the logo, like logos are almost never impressive on their own. Logos are only impressive to the thinking that goes into them and all of the other context that surrounds it. And so I think it's just like it's weird. I feel like a broken record, and I feel like I'm saying something very obvious, but I see it online all the time of people not sharing context and like depth stuff like that.
yeah. No, I agree to that 100%. I think I've had this conversation with other designers too. And there was a trend recently where people were only showing finished products. And I don't know how I'm on board with that because I feel like if you're not sharing that you're doing it, especially now with AI, and I know this is a conversation in every episode, but I feel like with AI too, it's even more important to showcase your human element, and how you made that design decision. Why is it important, and what was the thought process? But yeah, that's taking away from our conversation today, and I don't want to do that. But how long do you think that it took you to consistently post on Instagram, for example, or Dribble, and then that leading to actual inquiries?
No one's gonna like my answer. It was comical for me because it was the first time I posted on Dribble. Again, Dribble
Hmm.
was a different place back then, but the first time I posted, the next day I got an email from somebody. It's called Liquid Shot Co. It's weird. They were making in-flight beverages, basically like cocktails and stuff for in-flight, and so I don't know why they even asked me. I think it's because I was doing the kind of like at the time was like the retro posters, like the grungy retro sort of vintage posters. I had like posted just like one random little. It was really just like me following a tutorial, sharing that, and then getting reached out to the next day. And I was so excited. And then I shared the work that I was working on for that, and that kept going. And there's been so many hardships and ups and downs, and never to be expected that it was that easy. And it's not. And I don't want to understate the amount of work that's gone into it. And I also don't want to understate the amount of fortune and privilege and timing and things like that. But it was like, it really kind of just snowballed from there. Like, it really was just like, okay, I'll just like keep sharing my work, I guess. And at the time, the community was really thriving on Dribble too. So it was like you would share work, and then somebody would comment and like talk about it, and then you would like get on like Skype back then and like talk about your work. It was like so fun. And I think maybe that was partially my age, just being that much more like open and excited, and my contemporaries were also like younger and we had more time to do that. But also I
Mm.
think culturally it was like really amazing to be like, wow, I'm like meeting people that want to do what I want to do. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. And I just always like learned like a Pavlovian response of like, okay, Kirk, you shared your work and process online, and then you got work. So keep doing it. And I think that's come up with shortcomings for me too, in terms of like, I haven't pitched myself for like, I just wait for work to come to me, which is amazing. But also at the same time, I'm not like always getting the work I haven't worked with any skateboarding brands. So it's like that. It's like a weird thing where, yeah, I don't know. It's a double edged sword, I guess, maybe.
That's interesting. So, how would you ever pitch yourself to a skateboarding brand if you wanted to?
I don't know. Like, that's like such a muscle that I haven't, or blade I haven't sharpened, right, in my arsenal, so to speak, of like, and that was when work got really slow last year. Kind of like 2 years ago, for like a year straight, work really slowed down, I think, for most people. And for me, especially. And I just remember being like, damn, like the way that I'm doing it isn't working right now. I need to
Mm.
figure out the other way that people do this, of like reaching out to brands and talking to them. And the one quick, simple answer is like, I'm lucky enough that I feel like I can kind of throw myself out to a brand with the portfolio I have, and it kind of has some power behind it. But if I didn't have that, right? Because it's so boring to hear the perspective of somebody that's already worked with all these brands and it's done all this work. And but like, if I were starting over and trying to take that different approach, you have to have good work, of course. That's like a staple, a no-brainer. And you have to have, plenty of it. And I think you want to be able to share your work really simply and concisely. Like, your portfolio should be super simple, super concise, but also have plenty to dig into if they want to, right? Like, keep it simple up top, and then like really you can just like dig into the details in the bottom, and try to like continue to have that approach of, again, depending on who you are sharing with, but like, talking about numbers and statistics, and like when we redesigned the can, then all of a sudden 2 times the cans were getting sold, and like that type of stuff, I think, is what people are really excited about when they're hiring. um the answer to like how I would, it's like I would just kind of, and I would try to get on a call as quickly as I could. I think is the other like thought I would have, is like the sooner they can meet me for me, the better. And I know that I typically thrive when I'm in front of somebody. Like, I really like, I get the energy and all of that. So I would try to get on a call with them as soon as I can, and I would try to impress them with logos and stuff like that, which isn't something that everybody is able to do. But the core of it would really be just like trying to authentically reach out. And maybe the other thing would be just, if I'm in the advice world, of like, uh just trying to chat with them first, and not like try to like, there was a skate shop locally called Courier Goods. They're in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I think they're amazing. And I love what they were doing. And I wanted to get some of my shirts in their shop. And but first I fell in love with them, and I went to them and I supported them and I bought with them and I skated with the owner of the shop, and like I just did all of that stuff like really authentically and truthfully. And then the question came of like, hey, would you be down to do this? And it just came from such a different place, and it was successful as a result. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I guess I'm just saying the word humanity in different ways, maybe.
Yeah. I think it's also marketing and thinking about it from, I guess it's like different parts to it. It's marketing, but it's also the fact that you actually showed interest in the skate shop. You were actually interested. You actually wanted to buy their stuff. You genuinely liked what they were doing, and not just the fact that you're just there to sell yourself or your services. And I think that's the kind of balance we all need when it comes to storytelling with professionalism too, when you're sharing your work, because pitching can be in various forms. It's a direct email pitch, it could be an in person pitch, it could be at a conference, it could be just like what you did. And I think finding that balance is important too. So how do you kind of sort of find that balance? And even with personality, How do you show enough personality for them to know for who you are, but also not be unprofessional while doing so?
I feel like I talked so long in the last question that I can give. I don't know. It's not that I don't know. It's I don't think about it. And I keep trying to shift into this, like, how could I give advice? Like, how do I take myself out of it? But if I'm answering just for myself, it's like the more myself I can be, the better off I am. And I work really hard at my work and stuff like that. But I mean, it's all the normal things. I mean, my biggest advice is like get a job as a waiter. Like that was the best thing that ever happened for me in terms of like pitching myself was like having to serve food and to get tips and to like learn how to speak well and how to be like a bit charming and like no and like or be sweet with certain couples that are at the restaurant for a date. What if there's like the party table? It's like you have to like kind of learn how to perform and just learn how to speak and like traveling. Like there's like so many things that I think have come from working jobs that weren't design related that I think have really helped me in subtle ways that you really can't train and you don't learn at college and stuff like that. So I don't overthink it. Um, and I think that's probably the best advice is to not overthink it. And then the other things of like, don't be a murderer, be kind, be gentle, like be loving. And just like the more you can lean into that, the better. But it is interesting because you do hear like sometimes clients kind of pitch to me, even like they want me to work on a project and there's just yuckiness that is in the air and I can
Mm.
just tell and I can sense it. And it's so it really does come down to like I have to connect with the person if I'm going to work with them, at least in some capacity. I don't need to be their best friend, but everybody wants to work with people that they feel like there's some semblance of a connection with. And I think that's something that isn't taught very often.
Yeah, I think the culture and the society makes us think that you have to say yes to everything, especially in the creative industry too. So when you're pitching, you were right about the clients pitching to you as well, because it's not always you that's pitching to people. People want to pitch to be on the podcast. People want to pitch to be you doing their illustrations. Yeah, it's important to actually be comfortable in that moment, because if you're not giving your 100% and you're not happy doing it, you probably won't be giving your 100%. So yeah, it's interesting how that works. So do you think when you share daily, and I know we've chatted about this earlier, what's the thing you do to avoid burnout? And I know we're in a phase where you're not posting consistently right now, but that's not burnout, that's because you've just been busy. So how does that work?
I'm a type of person that for the last couple of years especially have been like kind of a not a daily person, right? Like I'm not like a daily drawer like some people are, and I love that. But I'm a pretty consistent and a don't overthink it and just post type of person. Especially lately. And then, but more lately, I'm afraid of it because I haven't posted. I got really busy. I got in my head. I ran away from it. Now I don't know how to get back into it. And so I think processing that even in the moment is good too. But um, it is like there's a tension because the moment it's like the moment you stop, really consistency is so important. I guess like it sucks. And there are people that are don't have to be consistent and then just every time they release something it blows up, but the majority of us need to have some level of consistency. We have to bend our will a little bit to algorithmic overlords and things like that, and I think if you don't do that you're kind of losing like the if you don't want to post, don't post. But like it's that thing where I've had conversations with friends where they're like, yeah, but I don't want to like, and so half doing it is never going to work. If you're like, all right, fine, I'll post every, 3 times a week, but I don't want to, it's not going to work because you're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to have fun with it and you're going to get frustrated by it. You might not see results and it's not a sustainable way to do it. So you have to find a
Mhm.
way that sharing feels good for you, whatever that is. And you also have to lean yourself into the culture of whatever you're posting on as well. Like TikTok has a different culture from Instagram, different from Behance, different from a cold email or a newsletter. Like all these things have different little bits of flavor to them. And I think you don't want to
Mhm.
completely ignore them. You want to like placate a little bit to what people are expecting on these different platforms. Like, and I don't know if these are even relevant anymore, but Instagram is a little bit more polished. TikTok is a little bit more casual and quick and snappy. And so like you don't want to just like copy and paste content across platforms is my thought and my perspective. But the way to not get burned out, I think, is just like to just try to enjoy it as much as you can for what it is and remove yourself from the performance of it as much as you can. Like, expect
Mhm.
0 likes, expect 0 views. And if you get one, you just, literally infinitely increase your metrics of what you expected, but just like, not in a negative, sad way, but just like really try not to like get too invested in the numbers. But I know how hard that is. It's super hard for me too.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I was thinking about that in my brain, and I've been obsessing about this one video I posted lately because it took me a very short amount of time, and I was expecting results that I didn't get. And I was like, okay, that's an interesting approach, but I don't know if I can do that because my brain has been trained to do the other thing. Yeah. So, how do you kind of maintain that approachable tone when you're sharing your work online, when as your repetition grew and as you grew on Instagram or other platforms?
So I've been lucky that like most of the platforms I've gone to have always amassed like a following that is usually sought after, I guess. Like there's a threshold where you're like, oh wow, that's a lot. And like what as it starts growing, you start overthinking it, but then you start realizing like, well, no, the reason why they're following is like just keep doing the same thing. It's the same thing with like client work. I often find that like if a budget is like that much bigger, I'm like, oh shit, like what am I gonna have to do differently to match that energy? But you realize like, no, they're hiring you based off like the other stuff that you did for $200. So just because this is $20,000 doesn't mean you have to do it differently. It's just like the value of it is that much more, but it doesn't mean you need to put in more hours per se. And I think
Mm.
similarly with following, it's like once like the following starts coming, you're like, okay, what do I do? And it's like, just keep doing what you're doing. Um, so I think that's part of it is just like, again, not overthinking it and blah, blah, blah with that. Um, but there have been moments where like it does get more intimidating or you get more nervous and things like that. Um, but it's also like silly. I think it's really just like, yeah, trying to just continue to do exactly what makes you, I don't know, even like being like, who am I posting for? And it's like, okay, I'm going to post for my best friend, or I'm going to post for my, like, you just like finding like a person that you're posting for and like consistently doing that. Cause to try to like post for like, I wonder what, designer 6243 wants me to post. It's like literally impossible. Like I take no feedback from anyone on how I post or why I post or anything. Like I will never like, I don't think that's like the kind thing to say. Like I know like Twitch streamers and stuff are like, oh, I'm really fueled by community and like whatever you guys, if you guys want me to play roster Fortnite, I'll play Fort. It's like, no, I have absolutely no interest at all in what you guys want me to post. I'm just going to post what I want to post and I hope you're along for the ride. And like, and I'm so grateful for you that you're here and I love you all so much. But like, yeah, I'm not listening to like you know what I mean? Like it just, because it's a fool's errand, I think.
That's quite the different approach to what I think, because I feel like I used to go with the idea and mindset of I'm gonna post what I post and this is what I like and this is the work that I do and this is how I present it and I'm gonna do it. And then I started doing live streams and be on YouTube a lot. And that community kind of made me realize, or I don't know, kind of shifted my perspective into showing them what they wanted to see. So I
Yeah.
just package it differently. So yes, I'm still sharing what I want, but I'm packaging it differently. Like you said, for Instagram, you package it
Mm.
in a different manner. It's still polished, but on TikTok,
Mm.
you can show more of your personality. So yes, I
Mm.
think you're also probably doing the same. Where when you say that
Yeah.
you don't care and you're not gonna listen to it, but yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
I love your 2 cents and I actually do agree with it. And I'm really glad that you said that because I think I am one doing it subconsciously. And two, I think there's a
Mm,
time and a place, like you said, like live streaming and stuff like that. I think it's like some of the coolest stuff about Twitch but even like there are a lot of people that are doing like community driven daily drawings of like what do you want me to draw next and like they flood the comments with thoughts and
mm,
stuff like that, but the core idea and concept is whatever they want to be doing, but like they're giving some level of access and control to what it is. So I just want to like back your thought 100% there. I think that's poignant and I agree with it, and I probably do it more than I realize. I'm not giving the middle
yeah.
finger to my entire following, but there's like I'm not letting them completely dictate it because then I would be like, okay, this sucks.
I mean, of course, because it has to align to your values and what you're doing and why you're doing it. So if you're not, if you're gonna give control to 10,000 people,
Right.
it's never gonna work.
Right,
Yeah.
right, 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 right.
Yeah, it's insane. So if you were to summarize pitching without pitching, how would you do that in one sentence?
Authentically, and in whatever way is sustainable for you. And I think empathetically. I think I talk about like selfishness a lot and like trying to like only do what I want to do, but like often putting yourself in the mind of what the viewer is, what whoever that viewer is, if they're a fan or if they're a potential client or whatever, but always thinking like, is this interesting? Right? Because there are those times where you just like start doing things and then you back up and you're like, wait a second, like, is there like any interest? Am I bringing value in any capacity to this? And very many times it's the answer is no. So like, yeah, I think like you're trying to empathize with who you are sharing for.
That kind of changed my perspective about how I show up online. So that's interesting. But thank you so much, Kirk, for being here. This was awesome because now I know that consistency is the pitch. You don't have to essentially traditionally go and pitch to people. But if you show up online or in person, it can be anywhere, but show up consistently. That's the pitch for you. So thank you so much for being here. I will see you on the next episode. And if you're listening and you're not subscribed yet, you can subscribe everywhere you get your podcast. Stay safe, stay creative, and I'll see you on the next one.